Personal story segment tonight. Last week, President Obama was harshly criticized for fundraising while the southern border humanitarian disaster involving thousands of children was breaking big. As you may know, the president did not go to the border to see the situation firsthand, choosing instead to raise money in other areas of Texas. Tonight, Mr. Obama is here in New York City raising money again, as I stated. In fact, in the 5.5 years he's been in office, Mr. Obama has attended 395 fundraisers, as opposed to 338 in President Bush the Younger's 8 years. Joining us now from New Orleans, Democrat James Carville. From Washington, Republican Kate Obenshain. So what do you say, Kate? Inappropriate to fundraise tonight?
Stunning. I really am lacking words. Not just the fundraisers, Bill, which are bad enough. The photo op at the charcoal grill. But even worse, I watched his speech today, his transportation speech, where he gave 40 seconds to the airline crash, which he called a potential tragedy. It was a stunt, and then he proceeded to launch into jokes for the rest of his speech. Compare that with 31 years ago, when President Reagan rushed home from Santa Barbara vacation from the Reagan Ranch when the Korean jetliner was shot out of the air by the Russians, calling it a crime against humanity. Very serious about the implications of this. President Obama is glad-handing ordering burgers medium well, while the world, frankly, is falling apart in other regions. And it's a stunning thing. Either he's tone deaf or, as you said, he just doesn't care.
What do you say, James?
I thought he should have gone to the border. I wasn't disturbed that he had a fundraiser, but again, I thought he could make a real difference on the border. I still do. I don't think it makes a real difference here. I think they're getting the information together. I think they had sanctions they've already implemented against the Russians in conjunction with the Europeans, I might add. The optics, you could dispute whether the optics are good or bad, but I don't think it's irresponsible for him to be at a fundraiser.
Well, John Kerry, Secretary of State, canceled an event he had in front of a Jewish group tonight.
Right.
You know, I wouldn't have done it. I always put myself in the shoes of people that I'm analyzing. I'm President Obama. I would have said, listen, you know, I'll come later on in the summer or whatever, but I got to get back and I got to, you know, monitor these 23 Americans if they indeed were killed. I want to call their families myself. I don't want to be in somebody's apartment. That's number one. And it, you know, true leadership, Carville. You know history a little bit, not a lot like me, but you know, you don't hear Abraham Lincoln. Look, you know, I'd like to concentrate on the Battle of Bull Run, but I got to raise some money. You know, that doesn't happen.
But if you know your history, you know that Franklin Roosevelt was with his mistress in Warm Springs, Georgia, during the Battle of Okinawa when he died.
Then we can talk about Bill Clinton, too. Presidents take vacations. Presidents do things. And you at the beginning of the show said there's really nothing he can do. It's just set the optics about it.
It's leadership. Leadership, James.
Again, they had sanctions that have led. They had the sanctions done before this ever happened.
And what good did they do?
The United States government told people not to fly over this area.
All right, but what good do the sanctions do when Putin gives these terrorists the big missiles?
They hadn't been implemented. They were announced yesterday, Bill. How can you say they're fake if they're announced yesterday?
Now, Kate, do you feel, I mean, to be fair to President Obama, the one thing that you stated was in his transportation speech, you know, he just gave 40 seconds to it. That was almost simultaneously with the story breaking. So he didn't have a lot of, I was following this almost second by second today. All right. And I was watching the whole thing because I knew what we were going to do if he had continued to fundraise. So I wasn't upset about that. But once 23 Americans are in play, then no.
Bill, you don't think that the President of the United States is aware in pretty quick form as to how many Americans were possibly. We found out pretty quickly that there were Americans on board, and the lackadaisical way that he approached that talk. There was a reporter from the Daily News in England who was in an airport watching that speech, and there was a collective gasp from people who were watching on the airport screen at how cavalier he was about this. There were tweets. I know you don't do the Twitter thing, but you had Piers Morgan trashing him. Josh Groban, Daniel Hannan talking about what a disgrace the response of the president was during those remarks. Bill, I strongly suggest that people go watch that and watch the president's attitude. It is about leadership.
Okay,
it's about
I just want to be clear.
Made this happen,
we haven't confirmed Americans have been killed.
Right.
We suspect they have. I'm giving Carville the last word. God help me. Go ahead.
If the 23 Americans were targeted, yes. But there's no evidence at all that 23 Americans were targeted in in this.
If they're dead by a missile supplied by Russia, Russia's responsible.
You know what?
A civilian airline was shot down out of the air, and we're not supposed to be appalled?
He shouldn't order hamburgers medium well.
All right.
That is true. I agree with you.
If
Absolutely.
23 Americans are dead, this becomes...
That's it.
If 23 Americans are dead, this becomes a huge story for the United States of America. Kate, Carville, thank you. Plenty more ahead as the factor moves along this evening.